How you doing? It's Chris, it's Kumar. We're back at you with some more sports talk. Today, we're talking hockey. We are a few days away from the 2019-2020 NHL season. We're gonna do an NHL preview show.
And we're gonna look back a year from now and see how we did. Let's go through the Atlantic Division first, where we're gonna go team by team and argue about whether that team is a playoff team or not. All right, Boston Bruins.
Playoff team, definitely.
Why?
You know, they made it to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. They're solidly built, good forwards, good defense, great goaltending. I don't see how they've gotten any worse. I have them firmly in as a Atlantic Division possibly winner, but definitely top 3 in that division.
Yeah, agreed. I think they're too good to fail right now. One issue was Bergeron was hurt last year, I think, right?
Yep, I think so.
And, you know, so you want to see if he's going to be able to hold up an entire year this year because he's basically centering that top line. But overall, with Ras, they have all the elements that I look for in a team. I look for a top line, 2 top centers as well, yep. A top defenseman, and a star goalie. Boston has all that. I have no doubts that they'll be back in the playoffs. Moving on to Buffalo Sabres.
They're getting better, but they're not there yet. I like their core. They've got a good core group there with Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart, Jeff Skinner. It was really important that they got him re-signed, but I don't see enough on the back end there. You know, Rasputin obviously anchors that defense, but I think they need to build more around him.
I pretty much agree on all those points. One thing to note was Buffalo was a great team at the start. They had 50 points in the first 41 games, and then they just completely collapsed in the second half. Yes, Eichel, you know, we'll see how they come back this year. I think the key thing is Rasmus Dahlin.
Yeah.
Again, if he's a guy that just kind of steps up and becomes an offensive dynamo, then the entire team will be on his shoulders.
Yeah.
Rasmus Ristolainen is one of my favorites in fantasy hockey because he just does everything except like a minus 40 last year, so if he improves that, he'll be a top player.
But defensively,
he needs to pick it up. If the goalies suck, maybe Buffalo should look into getting Luukkonen in their top goalie prospect, and maybe he could be their Binnington this year.
You know, it's a bit early, but you never know. I mean, these goalies are starting to play well earlier on in their careers.
Yeah.
Traditionally, I'd say it's too early, but you know, you can't say that anymore.
Thumbs up or down in Buffalo?
Thumbs down.
Yeah, same here. All right, let's look at the Detroit Red Wings.
They're a team that's right there in the middle of a rebuild. I don't think their goal is even to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
They're looking at their future, developing their next core group. They've got some really good young prospects that I think fans in Detroit can be excited about. I don't think many of them will even play this year. So that's a team where I think they're going to be focusing on trading 4 draft picks, really trying to kick that rebuild into a new gear. They got a great GM in Steve Yzerman. I think they're in really good hands there, but for this season, no chance of the playoffs.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting is that top line in Detroit. Of course, I think Dylan Larkin is a superstar already. I'm a big fan of Anthony Mantha, so before last year, I likened him to Todd Bertuzzi. And I think he's following a similar progress as Bertuzzi was. So, and Mantha, ironically, will likely play with Todd Bertuzzi's nephew, Tyler. So Mantha is my pick to break out this year, and alongside Larkin, he should be okay. But yeah, Detroit doesn't have a top defenseman. Their goaltending is weak.
Jimmy Howard still.
Yeah, they need to find somebody else there.
Not much behind them, I don't think.
Yeah, so it'll be a couple of years before Detroit does anything. So thumbs down for me.
Thumbs down.
Let's move on to Florida.
You know, this is a team that before we shot this video, we had some discussion about. I do not have them in the playoffs. I think they're a team that for sure has some good pieces. You know, Huberdeau, Barkov, Trocheck, Aaron Ekblad on the defense.
You don't think signing Bobrovsky is going to push them over the top?
I don't know that Bobrovsky's necessarily that good of a goalie anymore. I mean, if you look at his stats last year in Columbus, they weren't that great. He was a very good goalie when they had Ian Clark there as his goalie coach in Columbus.
Yeah, good point.
He doesn't have that anymore. And in Florida, that's a team that has a history of losing, a losing culture, if you will. When I look at who's going to make the playoffs, I look at who made the playoffs last year, and then I work my way back. So I look at who do I think is going to miss the playoffs. I have a couple teams in mind that we'll get to. But there's only I think 2 or 3 teams that made the playoffs in the East last year that I can see missing this year. And I have other teams in ahead of Florida. They're a team that I think is on the bubble. I'm not going to write them off and say they have no chance, but I definitely would not put them in my first 8.
Interesting. I do think that Huberdeau and Barkov, who I liked to break out last year, and they absolutely did. They have some depth scoring as well. And if Ekblad and those guys, they kind of step up. The only thing I think missing from last year was that Florida didn't really have a real goalie. I mean, Luongo and his backups weren't very good, and Bobrovsky is I think you can say he's better than just average. So I think Florida should be able to get in if Barkov and Huberdeau can lead the offensive side. So I say yes.
It'll definitely be interesting. I say no. This is one where we disagree. It'll be interesting to look back on.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Montreal Canadiens.
Now, this is one of those teams where I said earlier I could see some teams bumping in, and I actually have Montreal in the playoffs this year. They're a team, if you look at their analytics last year, their team Corsi, their team expected goals for percentage, they were easily an elite team. They were a top 10 team in the NHL based on their analytics. They were one of those sort of outliers that didn't make the playoffs despite that. They have a great goalie in Carey Price if he can stay healthy. And again, I guess the caveat here is if he stays healthy, I think Montreal will make the playoffs.
I have him in the playoffs as well. I think Carey Price on his own can carry that team. Max Domi was a pleasant surprise last year. I think they have the bare minimums to get in. Kotkaniemi has another year. He could progress this year, or he could break out. He's my pick to break out next year. But we'll see how he progresses. I think Montreal is a solid team, and it's really up to Carey Price. If he's healthy, he will carry that team, I think, into the playoffs. And they could do damage in the playoffs too, depending on how hot he gets. All right, Ottawa.
They're going to win the Stanley Cup. No. I do like them signing Thomas Chabot to that monster 8-year, $8 million per year deal. I think when you're really in a rebuild like they are, you're looking to identify your core, and Thomas Chabot is going to be the Ottawa Senators going forward. He's already, I think, one of the best offensive defensemen in the league. I think that's going to continue going into this season, and he's really going to solidify himself as their new Erik Karlsson. They're still a long ways away from being anywhere near a playoff threat. They do have some good young pieces, though. Brady Tkachuk up front. And I really like them picking up Erik Brannstrom, a defenseman they got in the Mark Stone deal from Vegas. I think Brannstrom and Chabot will be their core on defense going forward. They're both puck-moving defensemen, so you're going to see a lot of offense from the future Ottawa Senators team. But in terms of this season, they're definitely not there yet.
A couple of other names I like is also Colin White. I've been following him for a while. And Drake Batherson is supposed to be pretty talented, so we'll see how he does this year. Yeah, but no chance
Thumbs down.
to do anything yet. Next 2 teams, I think, is pretty clear where they're going to be. So why don't we switch it up a little bit and see the worst case scenario for a team like Tampa Bay. What's the worst thing that could happen to them that they would miss the playoffs after 128 points last year?
Worst thing is a number of things, actually. First thing would be Braden Point holds out. Last reports I've heard, they're not even close to a contract. And like we saw with Toronto last year, and we've seen with Calgary and other teams in the past, when a player misses training camp, they often struggle that year.
Agreed.
And we're in the middle of training camp right now. They're reportedly not close. I think Braden Point could have a bad season if he misses any significant time at all. And already the clock's ticking. Beyond that, I think if they don't stay healthy, they could be in trouble. I still have a hard time seeing them missing the playoffs. They just have way too much depth. But with them having to unload some contracts already this year, you're seeing a team that is being hurt by the salary cap. They built their team the right way. They didn't go out and try to buy anything. But in a salary cap era, you sort of pay for that success.
Yep.
You can't afford to pay all of your stars, and eventually things crumble. And I think that could happen in Tampa Bay. If they don't win now, or in the next 2 years, I say, they may not win with this young core.
No, and the thing is, if you want to look at what's ahead, look at what Chicago is right now. We'll talk about them in a bit, but
Exactly.
Chicago did the same thing. They paid the guys that won them the cups, and now they're really going nowhere. Tampa, yes. Toronto, talk about Toronto for a bit.
Toronto, for me, this is their year. What I mean by that is this is the year they have to win. They made the move, Nazem Kadri, for Tyson Barrie. They just signed Mitch Marner to that monster contract. They don't have the cap space to build off of the team that they have now. Now, having said that, they do have some good young prospects in the system with Timothy Liljegren and Rasmus Sandin. We don't know how they're going to be yet, though, but that could sort of help keep them at the top of the league for a few years longer than maybe they otherwise would. But for me, Toronto's a team that I look out for to possibly come out of the East, possibly win the Stanley Cup. I think they're definitely a playoff team. I don't think anyone will disagree with that. But in terms of a team that absolutely has to win now, Toronto is on that list.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, if they get off to a slow start, they'll blow it out of proportion and try to get Babcock fired and everything like that. I mean, the prospects, I'm not really too worried about the Leafs prospects. They might even trade them to get even more depth up front at the trade deadline and such. This is a team that won only 19 games in the last 41 last year, so it's not really speaking of an elite team. I do think that the contract for Marner was it's an overpay, but we'll see how that statement ages. The team lacks a little bit of depth on the left side, but I think overall, I also agree with you. I don't know if they're going to win the Cup, but I do think that they will be going to the Stanley Cup final. All right, let's look at the Metropolitan.
Let's start things off with the Carolina Hurricanes, the Cinderella team from last year's playoffs that unfortunately the clock struck midnight at the Eastern Final. This is a team built purely on analytics. I think a lot of credit goes to their GM Don Waddell, but it should go to Eric Tulsky from their analytics department. He has been masterful in targeting certain players that not only have been undervalued, that they've gotten cheap. Just look at the Nino Niederreiter trade. But guys that really fit their team system. Their defense is as solid as any defensive group out there. Underrated. My biggest question mark is a net. I don't know how Peter Mrazek will hold up again over another full season. So I said this going to last year's playoffs as well. He will be their Achilles heel. But I do think this is a playoff team, and this is a team that could go deep.
That's interesting. I don't have them making the playoffs. I think, of the list of teams, there has to be teams that miss just by a little bit. I think Carolina is one of them. Of course, they have that top line with Aho and Teravainen. Not sure who they're going to have on their wing. It could be Svechnikov or it could be Niederreiter. But overall, I think the team is lacking depth outside of that top line. Defense, as you said, they're underrated. I'm not a big fan, but again, Carolina, admittedly, I'm not a team. It's not a team that I followed too much. I'm not a big fan of their defense or goaltending either. So I don't think Carolina will make it this year.
Thumbs up from me. Thumbs down from Sandy.
Yep. But Columbus, another thumbs down for me. What about you?
Big thumbs down. They lost too much. They lost their goaltender. They lost their star winger, Artemi Panarin. This is a team that's definitely taking a step back, and I think should probably be looking to rebuild now, or at least a more aggressive retool. They've got some good young pieces with Pierre-Luc Dubois. He should be the focal point of their team going forward. But with all these other Eastern Conference teams sort of on the rise, I think Columbus is one of those teams that I mentioned made the playoffs last year. I see them falling out this year. And I don't even think they're really on the bubble. I think this is a team that you'll see probably more in the 11th or 12th spot.
I wouldn't count on John Tortorella, but yeah, agreed. I think the one thing that I'll be paying attention to is their goaltending situation. If their prospect Merz Lickens, If he can step in and take the reins there, could be good. Or it'll be just a rebuild year for Columbus this year after the hits they took in the offseason.
Yeah.
All right, an interesting team in New Jersey.
Very interesting. For me, New Jersey is definitely one of those bubble teams. Really, and we're going to get into them in a few minutes as well. I see New Jersey and the New York Rangers as two teams that are probably going to fight over that spot that the Islanders occupied last year. And it really could go either way for me. New Jersey, what I like is they've added PK Subban. They've added Jack Hughes. The big question mark for me is Corey Schneider and their goaltending. They traded away Keith Kincaid last year, so they don't have that sort of insurance policy behind him. Schneider apparently reported to camp in better shape than he's been in years. He claims to be healthy. If he can stay healthy and if he can regain his form, they're definitely going to the playoffs.
I don't think they will make the playoffs. I agree with you that the goaltending is going to be a question mark. They at this point, if Corey Schneider doesn't get off to a good start, just hand the keys to Mackenzie Blackwood, who was pretty decent to start last year. And they're probably the luckiest franchise in the NHL right now. They somehow landed Heischer first and Jack Hughes first. Heischer was first, right?
Yes, first overall.
Yeah. And Taylor Hall, they got in a lucky deal somehow.
They stole.
And PK Subban, they got him somehow really lucky as well. Yeah, so they built the core by stealing players.
Yeah.
And good on their GM, but I just don't think they have much else.
Let's jump to the New York Rangers because I brought them up. And they were the other team that had on the bubble with New Jersey. Now, I went with New Jersey in my top 8, but this very easily could be the Rangers. This is a team that decided 3 years ago that they're rebuilding. Rather than just sitting around letting their stars get old and wither away, rather than just saying, we owe it to Henrik Lundqvist not to rebuild and that we're going to try to push for a Stanley Cup, they did the smart thing and they went out and did a rebuild. And they were aggressive about it. They traded away, star players. They traded away Derek Stepan to get into the top 10 a couple of years ago. They went out and they did a rebuild. They stockpiled draft picks, and now they've got a good young group of prospects, headlined by Capo Caco.
Who they were lucky to get, by the way.
They were very lucky to move up.
They shouldn't have gotten the second overall pick.
Vitaly Kravtsov is he's a Russian prospect that I think could be an impact player. And they stayed away mostly from overpaid Band-Aid free agents. Instead, they went out this year and targeted the top guy, Artemi Panarin. They went out and targeted Jacob Trouba from the Winnipeg Jets. And, this is a number 1 defenseman that's going to anchor their blue line. Their goaltender, though, is still going to be Henrik Lundqvist. He's a bit long in the tooth. I don't know how he will hold up over a full season. This is a team, though, that I think if New Jersey doesn't make the playoffs, I see the Rangers getting in.
I agree with you. I don't think there'll be playoffs in New York at all for either of those teams. The Rangers, it's probably a year away. And then also, I guess, quickly the Islanders as well. They lost Leonard, and I don't think Varlamov is going to be good enough to carry them in the playoffs. So no playoffs at all for any of those New York area teams.
Yeah.
The Rangers, Islanders, or even Buffalo.
Yeah, the Islanders, they took a big step back. They took a hit 2 years ago losing John Tavares. Yeah. This year losing Robin Lehner. I thought they were lucky to get as far as they did last year, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, Matt Barzal's a great young player, but I don't think they have the pieces, especially in net and on defense, to get into the playoffs.
How about Pennsylvania? Let's look at those teams.
This is a spot that I think could be very interesting between the Philadelphia Flyers and Pittsburgh Penguins. I think these are two teams that are heading in opposite directions. I think Pittsburgh's on the way down.
Yeah.
Philly's on the way up.
Yeah.
Philly's got some good young players on their team.
Yep.
Sean Couturier has proven himself to be a star, possibly a number 1 center. Claude Giroux, still a great player. And in net, Carter Hart. This is a Philadelphia team that really turned things around when they brought Carter Hart up to their big lineup. And when we were talking earlier about young goalies who could have an impact, well, Carter Hart's a prime example of that. So for me, I have Philly making the playoffs over Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh losing Phil Kessel is going to take a little bit away from their goal scoring. They still have Sidney Crosby. They still have Evgeny Malkin, although there were there were rumors that they were looking to move Malkin. They got rid of Olimata, which I think is going to take away from their defensive depth. Chris Letang, he's very injury prone, so can you get a full season out of him? I don't think so. And then in net, Murray, when he was without Marc-Andre Fleury as his backup, I don't think he's been as good, as solid. So I don't know that goaltending is going to hold up over the full season.
Well, with Murray, he was awful to start last year.
Yeah.
But he rebounded well. I think the issue with Pittsburgh last year was their dressing room was just absolutely divided. There was a big issue between Phil Kessel and the coach Mike Sullivan.
True.
And Malkin was in the middle of that. And I think the rumors were that Malkin wanted out if Kessel wasn't traded.
Okay.
So they traded Kessel, and Kessel only wanted to go to Arizona, so that was another issue. But I think Pittsburgh should be without distractions this year. But yes, I think they're a bubble team now. I picked both teams to make the playoffs out of Pennsylvania. How about the Ovechkin-led Capitals?
You know, this is also a team that they're a veteran team. They've been around for a long time. They survived having a team blown up a couple years ago by winning the Stanley Cup. They're clearly still a playoff team.
But the interesting thing is, are there going to be any distractions from the Kuznetsov situation?
And that's really impossible for us to tell right now. You know, something like that, obviously, it's not going to not be any sort of distraction. I think with that suspension, there is going to be a tangible impact on the start of the season.
But it's not really the suspensions that you know I think would impact them. It's the player, his mental mindset. Obviously, he might be dealing with some issues. And if you look at some other players that have come out and talked about the issues they had last year, Goligoski is one of them. Dustin Byfuglien, another one.
Yeah.
So these things are real, and if they're, if Kuznetsov leaves the team for any reason to look after himself, it would impact his team overall.
If he doesn't play a full season and say he misses the majority of that season, I think Washington could miss the playoffs, and then maybe you see one of those other New York teams bumping in. Or perhaps, in my case, I didn't have Pittsburgh in. Perhaps Pittsburgh gets in. But for me, I still have Washington in. I think there's still enough impact players there. Ovi's still Ovi. And until he shows serious signs of decline, I think the Washington Capitals are going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I think they'll be a playoff team, but it's amazing. Crosby, Ovechkin, we'll see what happens with their respective teams, but I think the sun's setting, it's time for a new era.
My projections for the Eastern Conference playoffs. And Sandy's projections for the Eastern Conference playoffs. Now that we've done with the beasts from the East, let's move on to the Wild Wild West.
Okay, rapid fire. Let's go with Chicago. Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I picked no. I think they have bad goaltending, and I think last year Kane and Taves had a career year somehow, but I don't think they can keep that up this year.
See, I have to question that. How do they have bad goaltending when they just signed the reigning William Jennings winner?
Because, last year they had a bad team. This year, I don't think, so Leonard is going to be in a timeshare with Crawford.
Is he? Or is he going to be sort of the leader of that timeshare?
I don't know. Why did he only get a one-year deal? I don't think there's enough people in the NHL that think Leonard is going to be able to repeat what he did last year. I don't put too much stock into Jennings awards because that's a function of the team's defense as well. Chicago doesn't have a good defense, so I say no.
For me, Chicago, I think, addressed their defense. Okay. I think going out and bringing in Olimata and Calvin DeHaan, those are two second pairing defensemen that I think will bolster that defense.
Okay.
And I'm not fully sold on Robin Lehner, but I do think he's better than what Corey Crawford gave him last year. So for me, they're the team that gets into the West.
So Colorado, I think it's pretty obvious they make it.
Absolutely.
Do you think they're going to be able to replace Tyson Barrie with Cale Makar and Samuel Girard?
I think Girard's definitely proven to be a good young puck-moving defenseman already. I think Cale Makar, he looked ready in the playoffs.
Yeah, he sure did.
And then they added to their center depth, bringing in Nazem Kadri. This is a very good young team. This is a legitimate threat to come out of the West. I don't even have them as a wild card. I have them firmly in as one of the representatives from the Central.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll see how Grubauer handles the goaltending. But
That's the biggest question mark with them, I think, is their goaltending.
It's a theme across the NHL for many teams. So yeah, Colorado in, Dallas in.
Yes, I have Dallas again in as one of the wild cards.
Okay.
They're a team that I think played solid last year. I don't think they really lost too much in the off season.
Yeah.
And picking up Joe Pavelski, he was the captain of the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah.
Gritty player. He plays with heart as well. Good leadership. I don't think he's enough to take them, too far into the playoffs. I don't think they're a cup threat still, but definitely a playoff threat.
Yeah, 2 notes for Dallas. They have the best goaltender in the NHL in Ben Bishop. He was by far the best last year. And Joe Pavelski, 3-year contract, great deal. That's the window of opportunity for Dallas. I think Jamie Benn also has to step up this year. So I picked Dallas to make it. How about Minnesota?
No, I don't see them making it. And last year, I think you saw them slide.
Yeah.
This is a team, they're a big mess right now.
Yeah, agreed. Stahl and Parise, I mean, they had a pretty decent year, but there's just too much dependence on these guys that were from yesteryear, so no.
They fired their GM right after July 1. This is a team that's a mess.
Yeah.
They're not even in a rebuild mode right now. This is a team that needs to look themselves in the mirror, identify what they are, where they are, and where they need to go forward.
What do you think of Nashville signing Duchesne for that massive $8 million deal?
It's a big contract. Looking at Matt Duchesne, teams that he's been on have typically underperformed, especially some of those Colorado teams that we thought would be better than they were. But for
Is he the problem though?
Yeah, he may not be. It could be just circumstance.
Yeah, it could be.
I think Nashville's a team that really could use his offense. I don't like that they lost PK Subban, but if any team can afford to lose a defenseman like that and come out of it okay, I think Nashville has the depth.
Yeah. I think with Subban though, I don't think he had a good year last year.
No.
So if you look at that as the baseline, I think Nashville should be okay.
Yeah.
But I do look for Forsberg to see if Forsberg can take that McKinnon-like breakout. I would like to see that, where he goes from like a 60-point guy to a 80-point guy, 90-point guy.
Mm-hmm.
I put Nashville in the playoffs. You can't bet against Pekka Rinne right now.
Right.
So they'll be in.
And if he does falter, UC Saros looks very good too.
Yeah, absolutely. Defending champions.
St. Louis Blues, this is a team, you could predict them to be last, they'll give you last place. You could predict them to win the Stanley Cup, they may do that too. This is a team that I think underperformed in the first half, overperformed in the second half.
Yep.
They've got really good players. I don't know that they have the depth to maintain what they did in the second half of last season.
Yeah.
This is a team that I think could be on the bubble between third in the Central or the other wild card spot. Definitely a playoff team. It's very rare that the defending champs miss the playoffs. So I have them in, but I don't predict them for the success that they had last year.
I don't think St. Louis is a 120-point team.
No, definitely not.
And that's what they played like in the last 41 games. They had 61 points in the last 41. Obviously, Jordan Binnington is not going to repeat what he did last year. I don't believe that Binnington is suddenly a superstar goalie. So I do think that St. Louis comes back down to between 90 and 100 points. I do think they're still a playoff team, but obviously not Stanley Cup champions yet.
And we've seen this before, where a goalie gets hot for half a season,
LA,
and then the next year he doesn't follow up.
Well, okay, so bad example because Jonathan Quick did.
So LA's not a good example.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking more along the lines of Patrick Lalime. And I'm also thinking about Brian Boucher.
How about the Winnipeg Jets? I feel like we're going to disagree here.
I feel like we are probably going to agree here. This is a team that I really like. Winnipeg, they're true to my heart. So glad they have a franchise. But this is a team that I see missing the playoffs. They just lost way too much on the defense, losing Jacob Trouba. And with Dustin Byfuglien's future uncertain, they weren't able to go out and replace these guys with proven defensemen. I really wanted to see them go out and get Jake Gardner. They didn't do that. Kyle Connor and Patrick Laine are still both unsigned, missing camp as we speak. Cool. So You know, if they sign late, again, these are two candidates that I see could struggle this year. Unfortunately, I see Winnipeg taking a step back. Even if Line and Connor come back and have typical years, I think they lost way too much on their defense to make the playoffs.
Yeah, you know what? Even I mean, I agree with that, but also my factor for them not making the playoffs is that they're just a mess. I get the sense that internally in that dressing room, they're an absolute mess. You had, was it Patrick Laine speaking out the other day? Bufflin has decided he doesn't like hockey anymore. I mean, something has to go wrong in that dressing room for these guys to just quit on the team and the game itself. In net, Connor Hellebuyck, he's one of the worst goalies in the NHL in my book.
I still like him.
Yeah, sure, but he ranked, you know, so let me give you a stat. 15 goalies last year played 3,000 minutes, okay? Out of that 3,000 minute goalies, Hellebuyck only ranked ahead of Martin Jones in terms of quality starts. So, you know, he's
hard to argue with that.
Yeah, I mean, Martin Jones was, you know, he's a lot better than what his stats said, but Hellebuyck is right there. Hellebuyck had a good year 2 years ago. Last year, I think, was more of what he really is. This year, with no Bufflin there, and or we'll see what happens with that.
As well.
Yeah, I don't think Winnipeg's a good team. I think they're a mess, and I think their coach is going to be the first, you know, Paul Maurice, I think, is going to get the axe really quick there.
Hope you're wrong, hope I'm wrong, but sorry, Winnipeg.
Pacific Division.
On to the Pacific.
Yep.
We're really into the West now.
Anaheim.
This is a team that definitely took a step back last year. I don't think they're as bad as they were last year. You know, John Gibson was a top goalie 2 years ago. They had some injuries on the back end. Cam Fowler was out. He should be back this year if he can stay healthy. That'll definitely help them. If Hampus Lindholm stays healthy this year, that'll help them.
Well, do you think Gibson's going to be able to carry this team to the playoffs?
No, I don't.
Yeah, I don't think so. And they lost Kessler forever. Getzlaf is like in that. Getzlaf is a perfect candidate to go to the Minnesota Wild. I think
I could see
he's
that.
the type of player that it's a retread player that, you know, or on the downhill.
But they'll get something good for him.
So Anaheim, yeah, not a playoff team.
But do keep an eye out for some of their young players. I really like Troy Terry, and I really like Sam Steele. These are guys that can help them win more games than they did last year if they take the step forward this year. But I still don't see them making the playoffs.
Yeah. How about maybe a more interesting team in Arizona?
This is a team where if Chicago doesn't make the playoffs, I think Arizona gets in. I think they really caught fire again the second half last year.
49 points in the last 41.
Absolutely. And adding Phil Kessel will only help their offense.
Yep.
Clayton Keller just got paid, so they clearly believe in him. I think maybe they overpaid him a little bit, but this is a team that has some good pieces. Their goaltending is decent. I don't know that it's in the upper echelon yet. Their defense has some pieces. You know, Jacob Chikrin can take a step forward as well as development. That'll definitely help. And of course, let's not forget Oliver Ekman-Larsson. This is the heart and soul of that team. He badly wants to make the playoffs. He badly wanted to make the playoffs last year. They may go as far as he will take them. I see them probably on the outside looking in the 9th spot.
I have them in. I think they're going to build off the second half and they'll be able to make it this year.
That'd be good for their fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it should be interesting. Keller, I'm a big fan of Clayton Keller, so let's see what he can do this year with Kessel as well. What about Alberta, Calgary?
You know, this is a second place team in the NHL last year's regular season. That was backed up by their analytics. I do not like their trade of James Neal for Milan Lucic, although I don't think they really lost much. I'm just not that big of a Lucic fan.
I think it was a crap for crap deal.
Yeah.
But I think James Neal is a goal scorer and he has more upside in Edmonton if they spend that coveted spot next to McDavid to get value out of him.
I also don't like the sort of trade-off they made in net, bringing in Cam Talbot over Mike Smith. I'm not a Mike Smith fan by any stretch. Calgary, it seems to me they're cheaping out on their goaltending. But, you know, if Dave Riddick is the real deal, they're going to make the playoffs. They're probably not going to be as good as they were last year, but I don't think they've lost enough to fall out.
Yeah.
But this also hinges on Matthew Tkachuk. He's another one of those key free agents that still has not signed. If he stays out too much longer, I can't see him having as good of a season as he had last year.
Yeah.
But they still have Sean Monahan, Johnny Gaudreau.
Yeah. They
Elias Lindholm.
They have a great
staff.
offense, and the last year they were also #1 in fewest shots against, so that kind of hit some of those goaltending deficiencies.
Exactly. And if their defense can hold up like that, they're
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be a top team, but I'm not a big fan of too many teams in the Pacific Division, so Calgary should be one of the top 3 teams by proxy, but I'm not a big fan of them doing much this year overall.
Right.
What about their cousins up in Edmonton?
Definitely not a playoff team, sadly. This is a team that they were awful last year, and they haven't changed enough. I think James Neal, I can see him rebounding to 20 goals this year, playing shotgun to Connor McDavid. Leon Draisaitl obviously is a star, but I still don't see enough on defense for that team to take the next step. And I don't think Mike Smith is good enough to hide all the warts that they have on defense.
Yeah.
And they still lack that true puck-moving defenseman from the back end that's really going to take that offense to the next level.
Yeah, and also, I mean, they gave that weird contract to Koskinen, and then
Fired their coach.
yeah, they fired the GM after that. So I guess, I mean, they bet on Koskinen. This is it. I mean, they have to do something, or they, you know, at teams like Edmonton, they might be on the market for some retread goalie that's out there that could catch fire. I don't think they have much in the pipeline to really help them. So this is a team that became too good with McDavid, but not good enough. And now they're not bad enough to do anything else. But when they were really bad, they didn't really capitalize on it either.
Exactly.
But with that said, I do think they're a playoff team this year.
Interesting.
Again, it's a weak Pacific Division, so I do think that Edmonton gets their stuff together. Let's see what happens. I mean, we'll see if James Neal can find his groove.
So let me ask you this. Do you have them getting in over San Jose or Vegas?
I have Vegas in.
Okay.
Yep.
So over San Jose.
Yeah.
Let's jump to that quickly then.
Okay. So San Jose, I mean, their goaltending was really bad. They lost Pavelski this year. I don't think they've really done much to address the loss there.
That's true.
Now they do have Carlson and Brent Burns again, but it might be a team that just doesn't have enough to, you know, if 96 points last year had a team skip the playoffs, then you know, San Jose could be in that boat this year. I think San Jose is a great team, but I think they'll be a tough one to miss.
For me, I think San Jose's in, and I'm putting all my eggs in the basket of Carlson and Burns. I think you have 2 of the best defensemen in the NHL. Martin Jones, I think, can be good enough.
The worst goalie in the NHL.
But I think he can be good enough, as he showed last year. They made it to the Western Final. I think they'll finish probably 3rd in the Pacific.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not picking them to miss the playoffs by being a bad team. I think there's going to be some better teams, and I think there's some question marks for San Jose that I think this year it might not work out.
For me, I have the 3rd in the Pacific will be the San Jose Sharks. Number 2 will be Calgary, and number 1, our next team on our list, is the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm very high on this team. They've shown year after year, 2 years of their existence, that they are a better team than people would like to give them credit for. And I think a lot of that starts with Marc-Andre Fleury.
Did they do anything in the offseason though?
They didn't have to do much in the offseason. They did get rid of Colin Miller, which I am not too pleased about. I think Colin Miller was a decent defenseman for them. But they did bring in Mark Stone at the trade deadline last year, and having a full year of Mark Stone, I mean, this is one of the top wingers in the NHL, offensively and defensively combined. So I think having a full year of Mark Stone, they still have Jonathan Marchessault, they still have Riley Smith. This is a very good hockey team, and I think this is a threat to come out of the West. I still would have them losing probably to a team like Colorado in the Western Final. But I do like the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are high in Vegas. I'm neutral. I think they're good. They're not going to have the services of. They traded away Nikita Gusev.
Yes, who they didn't have last year.
Yeah, they didn't have, but they didn't really do anything with that asset. I don't think. But Vegas should be fine. I mean, they're going to be in the playoffs, no doubt, and Fleury's going to be there to carry them as well. But I think it should be easy enough for them to win the Pacific. But I don't know about the playoff chances. I think there's some other teams out in Central that could be better.
The LA Kings. How do you feel about them?
There's nothing to talk about there. Jonathan Quick was garbage last year. I think he could bounce back, but Kopitar took a step back. Their best goaltender is Jack Campbell. Campbell was one of the best goalies in the NHL last year in a short period.
But will they go with him, or are they going to go with
That's the thing, right? Loyalty, yeah. So the money is on Quick. Yeah. So I don't think there's much up front that they can really do anything. So
that's a team that had an awful year, and because of their contracts, they didn't do enough. They couldn't do much.
Yeah.
But they're firmly going to be in a rebuild mode. And we end with the Vancouver Canucks, our hometown team. Clearly, as you can tell, we've picked 8 teams to make the playoffs, so we don't have the Vancouver Canucks making the playoffs. This is a team that I think overachieved last year, and you might find that surprising based on their point total. But if you look at their analytics had them in the bottom 5 of the league last year. I think some of their additions this year, like JT Miller, even Michael Furland, will help offset any sort of projected regression. Jordy Ben as well.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan at all of Tyler Myers. I think they grossly overpaid for him on July 1st. He is a bottom pair defenseman based on his analytics, who's being paid like a number 1. That's going to hurt them long term. This is a team that has needed to rebuild for years, has not actually done a rebuild. They've accumulated some good young pieces by way of being bad and drafting high every year. I really like their core group of Horvat, Pettersson, Besser, and Hughes. I think if you look at that core group, that's a great young group that you want to build around. But I just think they have too many long-term deals committed around them to veteran players that, quite honestly, are replacement level players.
I'm a big fan of Markstrom. I think his analytics said that he was one of the better goalies last year. But he could be traded as well if they want to go with Thatcher Demko.
And that's the other question is, how do they deal with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the right move is to see what they have in Demko and then make a commitment either way. Don't make the same mistake that they did with Luongo and Schneider.
And with teams going with the goaltending timeshare now, that could be a realistic opportunity for them tonight.
Yeah, Canucks could surprise people. I wouldn't be surprised if they surprise people. But maybe they might miss. It might be, a typical of Vancouver where things are just heartbreaking. Yeah. And they might miss on the last day of the year. But it'll be interesting to see where Vancouver and San Jose go this year. And because I have them missing by very little.
I have Vancouver down on 11 to 12. We will show you my picks for the Western Conference playoffs. And Sandeep's picks for the Western Conference playoffs. Let's do the biggest prediction of the day, the Stanley Cup Finals. Sandeep, who you got?
I got Toronto out of the East, and I got the Avalanche out of the West, and I think the Avalanche will take it because I hate the Leafs.
I don't want to just copy you, but it's hard to go against those teams. I think this is the year that the Toronto Maple Leafs will exercise their demons in Boston, and that will take them to the Stanley Cup Finals, just like Vancouver did in 2011 when they beat Chicago.
Yeah.
I also have Colorado coming out of the West, but I have the Toronto Maple Leafs beating the Colorado Avalanche based on goaltending. I have Toronto probably winning that series in 6.
Well, if St. Louis won after 52 years last year, why not? Another long streak?
Why not then?
Yeah. All right. Good.
All right.
We'll see. Toronto and Colorado in the finals. Book it.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave a comment on your Stanley Cup final predictions and whether you disagree with our analysis or not. Enjoy the NHL opening night, Wednesday, October 2nd, and we'll see you guys next time.